Hello everyone. I am so sorry if my setup right now is very cluttered. So I did this interview with my friend Emilia the other day for our mental health podcast, and my audio was very bad. I sound like I was broadcasting from inside the washing machine. So I'm not an audio guy. I'm not much of a IT guy anymore, even. But from the little things that I've read, I try to fill my room, my otherwise very empty room, with little things that I have to dampen the sound. I don't even have enough books to fill my bookcase. I have my clothes railing on my left with my shirts and pants, which again aren't even that many. I just bought another clothes railing from IKEA just now. It's 30 ringgit on promotion, and hang my comforter over to become like a, I don't know, like a tirai. And at the back of the camera, which I think is actually the most important part because that's where my sound will be bouncing against, is my mattress, is my bujang mattress. Now it has finally come to use. So yeah, we work with what we have. Okay, so let's talk bipolar disorder, particularly bipolar disorder 2, which is what I was diagnosed with. Let's talk about suicide. Let's talk about therapy. Disclaimer, I am not a mental health professional, obviously. A lot of this sharing is shared for the purpose of people to relate. I don't know. For the purpose of awareness, of course, but don't diagnose yourself that you're mental health professional. And trigger warning: suicide. Trigger warning: self harm, among other things. Okay. All right. So let's define what is bipolar disorder. According to National Institute of Mental Health, bipolar disorder, also formerly called as manic depression, it's a mental disorder that causes unusual shifts in mood, energy, activity levels, concentration, and the ability to carry out day to day tasks. Okay, so the common misuse of the term bipolar, especially in layman term, they typically describe someone who is very unpredictable, that have like mood swings. Sometimes you like so nice, you're so kind, some like, and then like other times you're so like so mean, so evil. And first, this is very harmful for people who actually have bipolar disorder because bipolar doesn't cause you to bipolar is a mood disorder. It's not a personality disorder. So, and what does that mean is like, yeah, you either feel very happy or very sad, right? It doesn't propels you to do the things that you don't usually do. It just heightens your emotions, heightens your mood, which is why it is a mood disorder. So there are two types of bipolar disorder. The first one is two common types, at least, right? The first one is bipolar 1 disorder, where you have this state of like high called mania, and you have this state of low called depression. And the state of mania typically lasts for about 7 days, where people experience euphoria. Maybe they have illusion of grandeur. They think they are a gift from the gods, or they engage in shopping spree. Thousands of ringgit on impulse. And then there's also a period of depression, which is more familiar to most people, where you can't get out of bed. You cry a lot. But yeah, typically, contrary to, again, to popular belief, the layman use of bipolar disorder, it's not like a swing of mood in like a day, right? Usually is like a week of mania, and then like another like 3 months of depression. The period varies. Okay, so that's bipolar 1 disorder. The one that I was diagnosed with is bipolar 2, where it also has that state of high and low, but instead of mania, I only have hypomania, which is the less intense version of mania. But in exchange, I have a more prolonged episode of depression. So in my case, when I have depression, it can last from 3 months to even up a year. So yeah, like a year without break of feeling depressed, and I think later on in one episode I actually felt suicidal for 1 whole year without a break, which is hell. Okay, first let's go over my experience in hypomania first because it's going to be very short. Okay, so my experience with like my whole mental health situation is generally I am very grounded. So even when I have hypomania, I feel very very grounded. I didn't uh do something too out of the ordinary. The most that I did was, and it really happened either. Usually it only happened less than 5 times ever in my life. One time, I think one night, I I had hypomania, and then my thoughts started racing very very fast. Suddenly, I felt very very happy. Like there is no worries in the world, you know. Everyone is just trying their best despite their flaws, and I felt this overwhelming sense of love. I started texting a lot of people, telling them I love them. I texted my siblings, which is at the time was quite hard to do because I haven't talked to them in a bit. I even texted my crush, telling her like, kind of like confessing, not really, but kind of like telling her how I felt. And I remember vividly at that time, I was telling myself that okay, I'm I'm really going to regret sending this text because I did have that awareness at the time, but the feeling was so overwhelming that I felt like I need to release it. Yeah, but it wasn't necessarily pleasant, this hypomania thing, because like the f- the faster you go high, the higher you go high, the harder you crash, because there would be after maybe like a couple of hours, suddenly I will crash. Suddenly I would started getting really paranoid. I started thinking about death, not in a suicidal way, but kind of like thinking about the afterworld, thinking about heaven and hell. And then my mind would start racing really really fast, and I felt really scared, and I couldn't go to sleep. I couldn't even like, just like jack off and just like release myself. So I think in one episode of hypomania, I literally had to call an ambulance to admit me. um it was that bad. So for me, I hated hypomania. I hated it more than depression because depression is something that I am familiar with, but hypomania is out of control. I hate it. Okay, now let's go to depression and how was it like for me. Okay, so last time I used to track my mood, and in 1 year, typically I would have 6 months of feeling okay, of feeling just fine, like perfectly functional Homo sapiens, right? And then after the 6 month ended, I would enter another 6 month of very low state. Um, Even if there isn't any particular problem happening at the time, no drama, no one cheating on my front lawn, I would start getting I would start feeling apathetic. I stopped. I wouldn't be able to enjoy things that I used to enjoy anymore, like computer games or shows or films. I would start withdrawing, where um where I kind of like shut shut down from um any manner of interactions, like on social media, or from texting my friends, right? And I am a highly extroverted person, so typically I express and communicate a lot. But yeah, when I get into that state of apathy, I would just withdraw. And then when there is a particular drama or particular problem, typically a relationship problem, sometimes it is also a work problem. That's when I spiral into depression. A lot of crying spells, feeling very, very tired, like extremely exhausted all the time. And at one point, I get into quite severe insomnia. I wake up every I wake up 7 to 9 times every night. So my sleep wasn't rested. And then there's a lot of like rumination. I couldn't get to sleep partially because there's a lot of thoughts in my head, the same thoughts over and over again that I couldn't resolve. And there would be that suffocating feeling because your body is so tired, but your mind is so wide awake. With all these voices. I mean, like not literal voices, but yeah, I mean like this. Like two wolves in your head, going back and forth and don't want to let up. And it get to the worst point around 3 or 4 years ago, where my state of depression prolonged for a year without break, where it started getting suicidal. So okay, this is where I think we segue into feeling suicidal. So my experience with suicide, particularly suicidal ideation, a little bit of definition. Suicidal ideation is where when you um don't particularly plan out how to how to like how to execute the plan or whatever, but it's more of a uh what if I'm not here, would it be better for me, would it be better for other people, um and um there's a lot of involuntary thoughts, even when, for example, you see yourself dying in various ways, and it started involuntary, and then it started getting worse and worse and worse. So I started getting this suicidal ideation a lot, every night, and it lasts for a whole year. And oof, it was difficult. Yeah. So, and I think it goes without saying that a lot of people don't know this, but when people go into that state, it's not that they actually want to die, but it's just that the thoughts of living is very unbearable. And I remember particularly at that time, because I was thinking that, okay, even say that I would eventually get over that particular episode, right? But I couldn't bear the thoughts of getting through the same cycle again for the next 5, 10 years, or for the rest of my life. Yeah. So yeah, I think C.S. Lewis, was it C.S. Lewis, had have a very great analogy on this. Imagine a suicidal person as someone who are on the ledge of a burning building, right? And then they were about to jump. So, like, passerby looking will kind of like would say, "Hey, don't jump, don't jump," But for them, it's not that they want to jump and die, but the flames is so unbearable, so unbearable. So they just want to escape the flame. Okay, so how did I first started getting into therapy and getting diagnosed and all that? So it's a funny story because it was 2011, I think, and it was at a festival, and I think at the time I was having this like wave of feeling very high, maybe not hypomania, but still very hyper. And then I remember telling a friend candidly that I I have this sometimes. Sometimes when I'm happy, I'm really happy, but sometimes when I'm sad, I'm really sad. Which is like a meme. Everyone says that, but she actually replied with she actually told me that I might want to get medication for it, and at first I was a bit offended. But later on I got to know that she herself had bipolar 1. So at first I was a little bit offended, but then I thought I had always had that depressed feeling anyway. I didn't worry too much about the high part, but I have always had that persisting depression for as long as I know, right? So with her help and her husband, they they accompany me to HKL, Hospital Kuala Lumpur, to to get to get the first diagnosis, because even then I have had a history of self harm. So back then my self harm was way more automatic. Like when I get very when I get my emotion gets really intense, I started hitting myself with my fists or whatever it is that I have, that I had in my hand. You know, started hitting my head over and over again. And it was very, very involuntary and automatic, right? So I figured, okay, this must come from, I don't know, something pathological or something. And yeah, so that's how I got help for the first time. And the first few experience wasn't really pleasant. HKL is shit. I hope they are better now, but back then that was shit. I They keep changing my doctor, because like one doctor suddenly got pregnant, one other doctor suddenly like continue study or some shit. So it was very, very, very tiring having to tell my stories uh from zero again and again with different doctor. So eventually I went to a private practice and got a second diagnosis. I can't remember. And at that time they first diagnosed me as cyclothymia first, which is another type of bipolar disorder. And then later, I think like maybe I don't know, a couple of years later, maybe they changed it to bipolar too. So yeah, that's the story of how I got into um professional help, like proper diagnosis. Uh, then I remember I think somebody advised me to get to see a counselor, to see a psychologist, because at that time it's not that I was against taking medication, but I know that I am very bad with routine. So I decided that I don't think I can keep to medication for now, but I can at least go see a counselor every month or so. So um my first counselor was very, very good, Dr. Joel. She's still around. I think he's still quite active in the mental health scene in Malaysia. And then it's typical. I think it's a common experience of a lot for a lot of people that they get into counseling, it changed their life, and they stop seeing, thinking that I'm better now. All of the things are in the past. In fact, I don't know what got into me that I got so crazy back then. But trust me, the next episode gonna happen, and then you. That's when I realized that okay, it's a good idea for me to continue seeing therapy for the rest of my life. So I think after a couple of counselor right now, I stick to one counselor, and we have a really good chemistry. I love her. So okay, so I'm not sure if I have to preach to you why therapy is a really good thing, because okay, they are professional, right? They are the professional. They have studied in medical school for I don't know 4 years, 5 years, so they know what they're doing. In a way that your friends or your partner can't do, and your partner and your friends shouldn't be your therapist anyway. So take therapy as an investment, take therapy as a coaching. So if you believe in coaching, if you believe in going to a PT to get in better physical shape, that's how it goes with your mental agility and stamina, right? It's an investment. Okay. Yeah, go get therapy. And oh yeah, another great thing about therapy, especially when you have found your therapist, is my therapist right now is my time capsule. So sometimes she knows me better than myself. Also because she had like a more accurate snapshots of me in different states that I might oversee because I live in my body, right? Everything can be a blur sometimes. So yeah, therapy is great. And there's a lot of like cheaper options now. Hopefully that I will link somewhere in the description. So one of the best advice that I have ever gotten is from my dear friend Joyce Tagao, someone I love and admire very dearly, and I miss you so, Joyce. yeah, so I remember, I think I was being my usual depressed self, lying on the bed, not being able to get up, and then just asked me, "Have you eaten?" And I was like, "No, I don't have much appetite because I don't eat a lot, obviously, as you can see." And just said, yeah, get something to eat, because you can't fight when you are hungry, you can't fight when you are weak, and that stuck with me because I have always focused a lot on the emotional and the intellectual side of things, what kind of mindset should I adopt? What does this mean? How do I regulate my emotions and all that shit? But I neglected my own body, right? So I think these days, whenever I'm feeling a little bit like, lukewarm, I make sure that have I eaten? Uh, have did I am I well rested? Have I worked out lately, which I haven't for the longest time. Okay, so my process of recovery is three pronged. First, therapy and medication. So yeah, I mean some of you depends on whether you decide to go with medication or not. I strongly recommend it. But even without medication, therapy is almost non-negotiable. Go to therapy. It will be one of the best thing that you have ever done in your life. Second is exercise, and I have a little story for this. So prior to this, many years ago, I run a lot. I used to run a lot, because I figured that maybe stamina is my only strength when it comes to physical exercise. Because I'm a small guy, I can, yeah, I don't have many kgs to carry with me as I move my limbs, as I drag my foot one after the other. So for the longest time, I love running, but it comes to a point in my life where I find running to be boring. So I tried restarting it a couple of times and I just couldn't get to it. It was so dull. So what happened around 3 years back was I have this friend, one of my best friend, love of my life, Isabel. She is a powerlifter, and I remember checking her out, checking her IG, and she looks so sexy, squatting that weights, and I thought to myself, I want to look as sexy as that. And such was the beginning of my powerlifting journey, and I got really good at it. I joined my first competition in a year's time, which I mean, for everyone's experience as a powerlifter, your first year is always your best year, and then it just plateau. So yeah, I actually got really good at it. My PR back then, during the meet, was triple my body weight. So yeah, I'm pretty good. So comes with that was a sense of like a newfound love and appreciation towards my body, because again, I think people like us, this, I don't know what call a worker, diploma and degree holder, urban dwellers, right? We take a pride in our intellect and our emotional acuity. What's acuity? I don't even know. I just use that word really. But the feeling of actually taking care and honoring your God-given body is great. So powerlifting saved my life among others. So yeah, try to discover your own sport, the one that you will look forward to, not just because of the results, but you would actually enjoy the process of working out itself. For me, I love the very process of like lifting the heavy weights up and down. It is so satisfying for me. Even though my coach back then told me, don't go max every time. But what is there to life if you don't go max? Okay. So yeah, therapy and medication. Second is exercise. And the third one that has helped me is community. And by community, for me, because I don't actually participate in groups, in almost any kind of group for that matter, uh, groups dynamic tire me out because I don't know who's talking to who, why that flirt talk too much, why that flirt never talk, why suddenly I became the facilitator to this group. I love intimate one-on-one conversation. So my definition of community, I mean, community to me, it might be different to you, but community to me is basically just have that um circle, that small, even small social circle that you can reach out to um for help, for intimate conversation, for any immediate help. I have my besties spread around the entire Selangor. So even though, because my family is in Pahang, I live here in KL by myself. But even though I am far from my family, I have my second family here in Klang Valley um that I know that is always in my orbit, that I can reach out to. That if I actually need to see them, I can just drive for 15 minutes. So yeah, and it's good to have um a number of them, so you don't depend too much on just one person. So it's easier to maintain boundaries, so you can lighten the load for everyone. And of course, it's not just a one-way relationship. Like, I try to give as much as I receive. But for me personally, as someone who is such an reclusive extrovert, I have different. For some reason, I managed to build friendships, a different kind of friendship. Like, one friend for uh like intense emotional talk, another friend for this high concept intellectual uh enlightenment bullshit, and then another bestie for just that, for just the presence, just like sit and see her daughter running around. Um yeah um so because I believe that one of the cause of loneliness is because you can't share a particular part of you. So for me, one of the ways for me to combat loneliness is I share different part of me to different people, right? So even though I have been, I think I mostly live a very solitary life for the most of my life, but and I don't have, again, that one person that I can share everything to, and I don't believe such thing as this or even necessary, because you can uh share it to multiple people. So yeah, three things: therapy and medication, exercise, working out, and communal support. Start building them today. All right. So okay, is recovery possible? I can say now that it is, because I remember a couple of years back, even even as I was going to therapy, and I could see myself getting better and better every time, I still had that lingering concern that whenever my depression phase hits again, it's still gonna be very heavy and very difficult for me. And again, I might go through the whole suicidal ideation again. So I kind of like dreaded the depression phase again. But something pretty amazing happened early last year. So early last year, I left a toxic relationship with a narcissist. I left a very toxic corporate workplace. And surprisingly, I handled that. I mean, the workplace is very easy to detach, right? Once you're out, fuck you. I don't want to think about you anymore. Um, but relationship is always very delicate. Like, you had certain kind of attachment to the person. But I remember right after I cut off contact with the narcissist, and not even just that, I think the whole way I was, even throughout, before the narcissist started gaslighting and everything, but throughout the whole relationship, I was really really secure. And this is something very surprising to me, because I have always been very possessive, very clingy and stuff. But I handled the relationship pretty well. Post breakup, it was a little bit shaky because I was being gaslit, I was being dismissed, um, being devalued and everything, and all that narcissist bullshit, right? But once I started cutting off, I remember um feeling fully at peace with myself for the first time in my life. Fully at peace with who I am and where's my place in the world. And this is something that I would never imagine happening this fast. I thought that maybe if I would, I might take another 10 years before I can even get here, but I am here right now. I can say for certain that I haven't been suicidal for a while, and I can say for certain I won't be suicidal again. Not would. Um, yeah, so, yeah, miracle happen sometimes. Now wish for the best of you. Um, it's not for me to say this um because people can't tell you, but you need to believe it in yourself, and it will take again a lot of therapy among other things. A lot of therapy and a lot of people actually loving you for you to believe that you are loved. Um, yeah, but I hope you will get there. Okay, I mean love yourself and all that shit, right? But to believe that you are loved also takes the whole community. Okay, so yeah. I actually re-record this part because I wanted to keep it shorter, but it still ended up at 3 minutes. So yeah, whatever. Good night.